podcast. I'm Robert Kramer with Melody Brew. Mel, what's going on today? How are you? It's good to see you again.
Good. How are you doing?
Good. I'm excited to talk today about BoxWorks, Workday. They're doing a lot of different things in the marketplace, Zoomtopia and Smartsheets. What do you think?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Last week I was at BoxWorks. This week I've been tuning in a bit to Workday Rising, their big user conference in San Francisco. Today is the start of Zoomtopia. Actually, it's a one-day event, all virtual this year, and then they're doing it in various regions. And then Smartsheet made some big announcements, and we're Smartsheet customers, and so of course that not only affects the industry but us too. So yeah, a lot to talk about. And then we're both on the road for a really long time.
I know. We've the summer's been busy, but it's super busy, and in the fall there's just back to back to back. So
Yeah, a lot of travel.
Yeah. So let's do a quick disclaimer, but just real quick, I cover enterprise data, ERP. Mel covers modern work, HCM, CX. We all talk about data constantly, so we'll creep that in throughout the show. But quick disclaimer, and we'll jump into it. The show is for information and entertainment purposes only. While we will discuss publicly traded companies on the show, that's content should not be taken as an investment advice. So let's jump into BoxWorks 2025. Featured a lot of great things, specifically around people talking about data and AI agents. What did you see that was kind of unique and most important to their developments there?
There was so much. You know what? There was a lot, but honestly, when I say there's so much, that kind of sounds like some of these shows where it's like there's 50 different announcements, and so it's kind of hard to kind of wrap your head around. This wasn't like that. They did have some really significant announcements with Box Extract, Box Automate, and then some security updates. But the majority of it was really kind of around trying to solve the challenge of turning unstructured content into usable data, then letting AI agents act on it. So they're really big on AI agents, but it's a really practical shift from them from being really content storage focused to content intelligence and also data management. So it's a big shift for them. It's a smart one. It's needed. And, when people look at Box, they think like, oh, that's where I store my files. It's not that. One, we'll get to this in a bit. The file is back. No uncertain terms. People thought the files were going away. In no way is that happening. But the other part of it is really kind of that data management layer that's so important. So yeah, a lot going on.
Well, you said practical. I think that's a good word, because I think businesses need to understand when there's new innovations out, how do they get to actually use it? So they need to see it in motion. What also are the prerequisites that they need to have set up to actually take advantage of those cool innovations? So how does this change how enterprises actually use Box?
Yeah, it makes it, like I said, people look at Box as more of like content storage, which does a really good job of that, but now it's allowing you to do way more with your content. So it's less of a back office kind of archive, although they do have a very interesting archive solution for compliance, but more than storage and putting that content into this more active workflow engine. So for example, like they can manually pull data from contracts. Box Extract can identify terms, dates, renewal clauses, automatically feed them then into these downstream systems. So it's able to actually identify things that would have taken people a really long time to search for, look at, and determine certain things. And in some ways, in some places, they're not always in the same place. You look at a contract, not all contract start date ends are, right in the same exact spot. So this helps to kind of extract all of that in a way that then can feed into the systems, which with many of their partnerships, they're allowing that to do rather than having a bunch of disparate systems.
So I heard that another big theme was security, which we talk about that all the time, and who wouldn't think it's a big deal? And they have Shield Pro, I believe. And so do you think this is a big step for them, or a necessary step, or just the standard?
It is absolutely necessary. And Box has always been known for security. It's actually, I was initially a Box customer starting in 2016, running an investment syndicate. And that was the only place that many of my investors would actually interact with documents. So I know it as a very secure place. One of the things that came up in my discussion with some of the leaders there is Box doesn't emphasize that as much, and I think partially that's because it's just sort of a given. It's a very well known that Box has very tight security controls, but I do think that it is necessary to talk about this a little bit more in this new kind of AI agent era, because the more you automate and delegate to agents, the more critical that all this classifications, access control, threat detection becomes. AI obviously has widened the threat surface. So I think that, the question is that Box has shown that they're able to keep these protections. They'll need to continue that with high enough, security and accuracy moving forward with all these new AI enhancements.
So enterprises, they get all this new information, and they either, depending on their innovation aptitude, they'll move quick, they'll move slow, they'll see who else goes and uses it, or they'll do small, uh, parts of their organization will have access to it. Do you think this is something that they'll adopt quicker or quickly for these AI driven features, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I don't know if you saw, I'm sure you did, it's been pretty heavily talked about that MIT just came out with some data that shows that only 5% of companies using AI are getting an ROI from it. So it's great to see. I actually highlighted in our weekly. If you don't get our weekly, you should sign up for it, or I know you get it, but for our
Seen it a
listeners,
few times.
if you don't get it, I highlighted some Adobe use cases that are returning really high ROI. I guess returning ROI is redundant, but giving ROI. But because of that, because we really need to start showing these use cases that do provide that ROI. But I think that adoption will likely start with lower risk processes. So data extraction from standard forms, more internal workflows. Heavily regulated industries may wait for more proof points. So let's take OCR as an example. I had a chance to meet, and one of my customer meetings was with the CIO of Valmark Financial Group. It's a registered broker dealer. They deal with obviously a lot of financial documents, similar to my use case with Box, Docs in Box. But if you look at some of these documents, they're very often photocopies, scanned documents, forms that are proving to be really challenging. Those definitely require some human oversight. So that was one of the questions I asked in the executive Q&A with Aaron Levy, the CEO, and Ben Coos, the CIO of Box, is how they're working that out. And so they definitely have some very technical solutions still to be carried out, but they're finding ways where actually, because of the pixelation, the AI is likely to be better at, with the right AI, likely to be better at identifying things that, let's say, are faded or pixelated because of age, or it's a photocopy of a photocopy that's been scanned. Think about how many times in financial services, like real estate and everything else, where a wet signature was required for decades.
Mhm.
So AI could actually be better at that than a human to identify things that maybe there's something missing, you can't see. AI can kind of fill in, sort of like that generative fill and identify that. So they do have some solutions for this, and I think that still many to be carried out, but answers to those questions.
Yeah, I still feel, and I did a webinar yesterday with Acumatica about change management and data management and data readiness, and I still think companies have So the end goal is this ROI. Beginning goal is I'm at fear. How do I go from fear to change management, to adoption, to implementation, to successful, to an ROI? I just think there's a lot to it, and this data story is a big deal. And so that leads to my question. I'm going to put these next two together. So, how do you think this positions Box in the competitive landscape? And is there any unanswered questions for them, with what you've said and even what I just recently said to you?
Yeah, so I do think it puts them, more importantly, from the content management to data management space. And I think that gives them an advantage, right? So
Mhm.
the company, like I mentioned before, the files, the industry really questioned the future of files just years ago. But
Sure.
AI has made them so much more valuable than ever. So AI agents can read files as context. It can generate sophisticated files from templates. And the portability of files makes them ideal for cross-system workflows. So the file is back. File's back. It's back, baby. Um, I mean, they still have to maintain that edge, right? Where Microsoft and Google integrate similar AI driven features into their productivity suites, either now, eventually, in progress. The biggest unanswered question, as you ask, is that they, just like things have to be data ready, the data has to actually be organized and ready in a way that enterprises have to solve the taxonomy, governance, agent interoperability challenges to unlock all these AI workflows. If not, this is just more AI hype. And that's not necessarily on Box. That is a matter of file and data quality. So when I look at a company that's been using Box for, let's say 10 years or even 5 for that matter, but hasn't been properly filing things, hasn't been properly naming things, isn't using the right metadata, there's still a challenge for them. Now
Sure.
there are tools for metadata extraction, for file organization, box hubs, things like this that can help solve those problems, but they're not going to solve on their own. So still
But
some challenges that, again, aren't necessarily on Box. They will help solve them, but this is a two-way street. The customer has to be ready,
yeah,
and Box has to have the right solutions.
it is a two-way street. And I think the data is going to be a subject for a long time, specifically with AI being in the forefront and things moving from processes to event driven and other types of industries like ERP or SEM. But at
Mhm.
the end of the day, companies have not put a lot into their data management strategies until recently. And I think some companies have made it a priority for a project, and some have not. But you can't take advantage of anything with AI without that strategy. And so, as we go to talk a little bit about Workday, they are a significant player, obviously. And I've talked to you that I'm a professor at a school. We actually use Workday is used there. I'm very impressed with it. It's a fantastic, application. But they've acquired Sana or SANA for
Mhm.
1 billion plus, and it's gotten a lot of attention. What does Sana bring to the table? Why does Workday? Why did they acquire them, and how do you think that's going to play out?
There's so many things that go into this. So Sana is an AI native. AI native. I mean, I don't know how much more buzzword we can get than that, but okay, built on AI, for AI, but it's learning and knowledge agents that Workday doesn't have. So instead of just managing learning courses, it can surface knowledge in context. It can recommend next steps. It can automate a lot of parts of employee development, that's a really big one. But first, I think there's some important context here. Workday's learning platform was originally kind of designed as a video sharing system rather than a full LMS, learning management system. It lacked basic features like even third-party content import. And one thing to note, Workday's stock has been the lowest performing among public HCM companies, not the overbroad, but the HCM companies over the past decade. So it trails behind ServiceNow, ADP, SAP, Oracle, but they used a lot of they paid $1.1 billion for this company. So you've got to look at that as this is a pretty big sign. It is battling Workday's reputation for being in the learning management system, which I wouldn't even call it a full LMS, being really difficult to use. I mean, they had thousands of features running on antiquated architecture and proprietary systems. They really had not kept pace. And this is a $400 billion market, the corporate training market. And everybody has shifted towards AI-driven, more dynamic content creation. So Workday really lacked a competitive assistant platform compared to, say, SAP Joule, ADP Assist, and even ServiceNow's Now Assist offerings that are more recent. They struggled with interoperability. So customers demanded connections to ServiceNow, SAP, Microsoft, and then any emerging HR intelligence tools. So without this, they really risked being relegated to back-end service behind Microsoft Copilot. They also had a Microsoft announcement that was quite interesting. Not sure we'll have enough time to get into all of that, but I'm actually going to publish a full thing on Workday Rising, but also Google Gemini, ChatGPT, so other enterprise agent platforms. So this is a big shift for them.
It sounds extremely significant for them, and I'm just trying to understand, and you'll be able to fill me in and fill everybody else in. How does this fit with their overall strategy? And then also, I'm always about the customer. Like, when I think a lot of these tech companies are only featuring the benefits for them or these great innovations, but like we were talking about previously, the customer needs to know what are the steps to get to use that innovation. What do I have to have in place? Because everybody's at different levels of innovation aptitude. They're not going to be at the same place. So I can't just go from here to there and assume I have everything in place. I think that these tech companies should assume we don't have it in place. That we need more, right. We need more training. We need better data. Our data structure is not correct, or they have to show the customers, that famous word of ROI. So how does this affect their strategy, and what are the benefits for the customers? What do you think?
So one of the things that I'm sort of my thesis around my overall kind of analysis and eventual about soon to be published write-up about Workday Rising is that, like many companies, it's really making this push to be an AI platform. But what I think is actually more significant for Workday is that it helps the company shift from being primarily a system of record to becoming more of that system of engagement. That way, Workday becomes a daily platform. It's something where employees interact with agents for learning, HR, knowledge management, also finance. So there are more practical benefits for the customers. I think faster onboarding, more adaptive training, more centralized knowledge hub. It should help reduce friction when employees need to find answers, which, that's frustrating. Like that sounds simple, but it's actually it's a real pain point in companies when people need to build new skills. Also, it takes something like being able to track more KPIs for employees that could see, for customers, for enterprise customers, that's a real benefit. For employees, that may be looked at as more things to track, more things to be judged on. But the reality is that this Sana acquisition really helps to kind of bridge that tracking with action. So everything that you're tracking in your job, you're getting performance reviews, you're getting feedback, and then you're tying it to what do I need that's right here available to me to do my job better. So it's a really interactive kind of synergy between what the enterprises need, what the employees need to be better employees. And I think that that's, ultimately a win for Workday, their customers, and their customers' employees.
I agree. And so, but one of the things when you do expand, there's risks and challenges. And then how does this change them in the competitive positioning? They obviously have competition, but we've seen them really grow over the last 10 years to be at a significant level. So do you see this as are they expanding outside of HR? So as well. So the kind of
For
multiple
sure.
questions there, but I'm just trying to see what you think.
Yes, for sure. I mean, they're definitely beyond HR and into finance. And I mean, they've always done, on the finance side, but it's more than just being an HCM platform. If they execute on this, it really positions them closer to what they're calling the front door of work. So where HR software isn't just about compliance, more about productivity. And I think it's the immediate focus of this acquisition, at least on learning and talent, but knowledge agents will eventually touch finance, planning, IT workflows. So if Workforce builds this right and they can make all these connections, it's not going to be easy, right? I mean, on every stage, every CEO, or in this case, co-founder and executive chair, they do these demos. Everything seems like, they use the word seamless and everything seems like it's magic. These aren't easy, but with other recent acquisitions, this Sana acquisition, if everything is built as intended, and they have had some initial use cases that have shown this could really expand their footprint well beyond HR and finance, and it really does position them well against competitors. From what I've seen so far, yet to be seen the rest.
We're going to stay tuned. So let's shift gears to Zoomtopia. What's
Yes,
interesting, which is today, right? I think you
it's
said.
about to happen.
Yeah.
Actually, probably by the time we hit, happening today.
So we all use Zoom. It's fantastic. I would think that the best thing about Zoom is how convenient they can make tools for the use of what we're already doing with it. And I think that's one of the things that they've actually been a leader. Plus, their UI is, I think, probably better than the competition. Just my opinion. I'm not a huge fan of Microsoft's. I think it's a little cumbersome, and it's
Of Teams, you mean?
yeah, Microsoft Teams, because I don't know if you have a problem, not to deviate, but it doesn't work well like on Google, but it works on Safari better. I don't know. And I always have problems with it, and it's just not the easiest. But so Zootopia is here. Cool name. And what do you think the things are going to be? Anything that we just mentioned, or what's on the horizon?
Yes. So you actually called it exactly without probably even knowing that you called it. So where we're having so many of our conversations within Zoom to be able to take what they're now calling conversation to completion. That shift from having the conversation on Zoom and then taking everything off of Zoom and into various different applications is what Zoom is trying to tackle. They're trying to have a tighter integration of Zoom, like Zoom Docs and their other tools, into workflows beyond video calls. So what we're going to see at Zoomtopia, a lot of AI, of course. I mean, when do we not see a lot of AI? But really some enhanced productivity with agentic AI capabilities. And I've seen some of these in action. So AI, I'm going to say, not in any disparaging way. It's actually quite complimentary, but you would be very surprised at the level of sophistication of Zoom's AI capabilities. I think that sort of somehow goes with the territory of being known as the kind of the video company.
Mm-hmm.
It takes quite a bit just to make these videos be so easy to use, be so easy to share. And I know you use AI Companion, which is probably one of the better AI summaries that you can get. I put them with WebEx. I truly love WebEx, the catch me up. If you're ever joining a meeting late, not that I'm ever late. But What we're going to see, we're going to see some enhancing their AI capabilities. So memory, reasoning, task actions, orchestration. The work surface is going to expand. We'll see more writing assistants, more active like meeting assistants and group collaboration tools. I think I'm past, I'm checking on the time. I think I'm past the NDA on this, but some pretty cool things in terms of actually getting to know the context of the work that you do and being able to suggest, like, you free up your time. Like maybe you might be able to skip this meeting. I think we have to get to a point where people are comfortable with somebody not being in a meeting and sending their AI assistant to the meeting in their place. We're not there yet. As human beings, we're not there yet. If I say I need a meeting with Robert, but you send your Zoom avatar, I'm going to be like, dude, just reschedule, right? But if you're in a meeting where there's a bunch of us and we have to have a conversation and you're kind of just there to listen in, why wouldn't you just send your AI assistant? It's like you're there, but you're not there. We can still actually assign you tasks. We can't ask you questions. Maybe we'll get to that point where, the AI can then comb through your documents and activities and things, and they may be able to, give status updates if let's say there's a connector to Jira or Monday. It could say, where's Robert on this project? Oh, that's a work in progress, or Robert has that marked as done. I mean, these are real life productivity scenarios that Zoom could be solving, that I think are really interesting and will definitely get them out of that whole, stuck in the video work era. So I think in contact center, we're going to see more kind of AI-driven marketing, sales, service innovations. They're doing a lot in contact center that is not, to me, not surprising because of, the amount of data that they get from calls, interactions, because it's not just video, they have Zoom phone too. So a lot of growth in that area too.
So it sounds like they're trying to set themselves apart, which they're doing. They're trying to be more than just a meetings, video company. So if I'm a CIO deciding on collaboration tools, what do you look for from Zoom? Because it sounds like they are setting themselves apart. They're trying to do more and bring more to the table, like you talked about the AI assistant. They one of the things that I like is going beyond just the meetings company. Are they going to compete, not to deviate with that question with the CIO, are they going to try and compete with like a video production company like what we're using right now, StreamYards?
So they do have tools for that. They have Zoom clips, which is actually quite useful if you just want to record a quick thing and send it to a colleague, or, let's say somebody can't be in for an all hands meeting, they can record that. The editing capabilities in general for like podcasts and bigger and kind of, I would say, more low level production stuff, not yet. They do have Zoom events and webinars that are pretty sophisticated. I mean, Zoom events is very sophisticated. I would not, I would say there's the big competition from all areas, but Ring Central Events is one that actually it purchased from who owned StreamYard, which is what we're using now. So I think that's a possibility. I don't see that on the roadmap. I don't see the roadmap yet, but I wouldn't see that as something they should necessarily be super focused on at the moment. I think right now, kind of going back to your CIO question, they need evidence that Zoom not only saves time in meetings, but also reduces the overall tool set. So clear ROI stories, less redundancy, more streamlined workflows, those are essential. Adding to that, my biggest hope for Zoom is to move beyond kind of trying to create this clarity in messaging of not just being a video company, but give more product clarity. What that looks like to me is understanding the context of what the user is working on and surface those features that are going to be most helpful to them. So I don't think that the company can expect that a typical user will sift through hundreds of new releases. There was one point where Zoom was like, we have 300 new features. You can't release 300 new features and expect that everybody's going to, one, use them all, know what they are, know how to use them and implement them. So I think they would be really wise to package these features in a way that provides clarity and surface them to use in the right situation. So ultimately that'll drive more clarity and more adoption.
That is really a good line because I think it's important to delineate the features and how they're going to be used at the right situation because it can confuse the users because there's so much innovation. But how do they know? Going back to the vendors talking about innovation, how do they know everybody wants to use those features?
Yeah.
What's best for certain users
Yeah.
or companies, and they're all at different levels. So I think like I said, you got to cater to the customer.
Yeah.
So
One last thing on this that I think some companies have gotten away from is release notes that are aimed at the user. If
yeah,
you look at most companies' release notes, they're really aimed at developers. They're aimed at implementers. They're aimed at they're very technical.
yeah,
When I was a CMO, I was early on in the startup world. I was responsible for creating some release notes some of the time. So I worked very closely with product. That's another thing I think every company needs to be doing is that product has to be tied to everything. Product can't just come out with these things and then expect for marketing and comms and even analysts to then just, kind of take this
true.
thing and say like, this is what to do with it. All these things can't kind of be created in a vacuum, but that's a different soapbox that I'll get off for the moment. But release notes that are geared towards the actual user can be really useful. And so articulating changes, new features in really clear language that allows people to understand this is what it's going to do for me is something I think we've sort of lost track of in enterprise software.
Yeah, that's a really good comment. I appreciate that, and I agree because the users, like we talked about, those are the active ones on these systems, and the more technical people are more that helpful source at that company. So
Yes.
I but it's a training tool. It's something that could be used to
Yeah.
for new employees, et cetera, for the CEO to understand it, right? So,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
jump into one more, the smart sheets. They got some new features, new updates around control and visibility. We use smart sheets. It's a pretty cool application. They're kind of on the rise, I would believe, right now. So they have some new updates that I mentioned. What's the core of these changes? How do they affect the customers?
Yeah, it's funny because I think this ties in a little bit to our last conversation, which is Zoom has the same sort of, I guess, challenge opportunity that Smartsheet has, which is you have end users, but then you have the decision makers, the buyers, the more technical side of things, and you've got to make things visible and understandable for both.
Hmm.
So I think what Smartsheet has done with this new announcement, it announced new updates around control and visibility. So at the core of this is that it's really a redesigned seat management dashboard that gives the more technical side of the house the ability to push global updates across projects. Admins get clear visibility into who's using what, kind of how their billing cycles align, things like that. But then users also get more visibility. We're kind of good examples of this, right? Like we see certain dashboards that maybe our operations team, they control, but we still
Hmm.
need visibility into that. So giving control and visibility at the same time it's not as simple as it sounds. And I think Smartsheet has done a good job at kind of giving these reports and dashboards that can scale across like multiple initiatives, but also remain kind of under that control with permissions and such, governance, efficiency, and then also that really can help like eliminate some waste by sort of reporting these idle seats and
Sounds
net, it's tightening their oversight and control and helping the customer to control costs.
By the way, I got my cool mug here. I don't know if you have one of these, that it sits on a thing that heats it. Do you have one of those?
Oh, no.
Yeah. So I'm drinking my coffee. I got it from Teradata. So they
nice little plug there. But we do love some that's so funny. We both have our coffee mug swag. I've got my Snapdragon
nice.
Yeti, which this is how I keep my coffee warm, is I have to have a lid on it because otherwise it sits for too long. I like to sip my coffee for a while, but having it on the warmer is like, that's next level. Now I'm jealous.
It has to be hot. It doesn't work. So the customer, me, I like my coffee hot. So Smartsheet, I would think that this is all for the customer. So why does this matter for them? And then how does this reflect where Smartsheet is headed strategically? Because I think those are good questions. And I think that that's what they're doing, that the roadmap is to help the customers and the roadmap this is their strategy. But what's your take on that?
It's showing that they're really leaning into enterprise requirements, control, cost management, scaling across larger organizations. So they're doing something I think you talk about quite a lot, which is stop showing flashy features and start showing more like real pain point solving. And I think they're doing a good job at that. So it's not just a matter of what can it do, but what is it going to do for me? And that's always should be should be the big part of the why and also the explanation of it.
So how does this matter to the broader work management market, and what should the customers be looking for next?
I think it aligns with what other vendors are doing. So if you look at like Microsoft, Asana, Monday, I have my favorites. I lived in Jira for 5+ years. So much of this becomes around kind of personal preference, but so often personal preference is driven by just usage, right? Like, so the more that I use Smartsheet and the more that I feel comfortable with it, I find that I see like the advantage in its flexibility, how it can adapt across industries, and also it gives leaders more of that visibility in a way that, although I am a Jira lover, in a way that Jira was a little bit more rigid, where, oftentimes it required a Scrum Master to make, fairly, AI has solved a lot of that. They have, I was going to say AI has solved a lot of that for them. They have solved a lot of that with AI. But if I'm trying to think, I'm trying to be careful in how I say this. So, as I just as much as I love and was an avid Jira fan, I also, with some of our projects, am deep into Monday, and I do not find that to be as intuitive or as usable and sticky as what I've experienced in a much smarter period with Smartsheet. So that's sample size of one, but I've used a lot of these tools.
What's really interesting, and kind of conclude on this, because I think it's a really good subject, is the consumer behavior. Actually, I teach a class on it. It's so, and nobody talks about it. Like, and what I mean by consumer behavior, you know what I mean, but just to the audience, there's opinions for the users. They have when you go buy something, you just said Jira. Well, obviously, that's going to be something that you would be a proponent, an advocate for, not a proponent, because of your past. These behaviors have to be weighed in. You might have half of your team hates AI and your data is bad and they know it. That behavior is going to be a completely big part of your change management. So I think that has to be worked in. Everything that we talked about today deals with the consumer behavior at some point in the buying, implementation, long-term process of the use of that software. So I'll let you answer that question because I think that that's a good conclusion question.
I think that you are spot on with that. I actually just this morning published something on how enterprise vendors are catering to college students, and that is to get AI in their hands. Google is doing it. IBM is doing it. I mean, name it. Microsoft, ServiceNow, Adobe, name it. They're doing it. Actually, Zoom is going to, we're well beyond the NDA now. Zoom is going to announce a pretty significant investment in that in academia as well. So these are all to do exactly what you're talking about. A customer is a customer, whether they're using it in college, they're going to come into their environment in the workplace, and they have their favorites already. And you never know where somebody's like now entry-level worker is going to be the decision maker. So they want like consumer driven kind of experiences. And that leads to like long-term.
Huge. No weight on that in anything we talk about, and it is such a big deal. And I love that you just said how they're going after the college, audience, because of the fact that these previous buying knowledge is a significant weight on future ones. Just an example, I was getting a new car, et cetera, and I hate white. And the guy, one of the car dealers, is like, "Hey, I got this great white car." I go, "I don't even care what the price is. I hate white." So, but like that. But if he knew that, he would never say it. Like Microsoft and what they, if they had 99 out of 100 people love Teams or vice versa, they might think different how they develop it or get feedback or. Right. Sure they are, but in the end, this consumer behavior plays a role at every level of life, whether it's a consumer product or an enterprise product.
Yes. Yep. So you'll have to check out. I literally just published this morning about I'm looking at it, how college AI use shifted from campus white bands to big tech's playbook. It's a big one.
Said. Love it. Well, thanks for joining us, Mel. This was amazing. And next week we have a lot of new things that we'll be talking about because we'll be traveling. Before we wrap up, where are you going to be and what's going on? Because I'll be traveling as well.
Yeah, after Zoomtopia today, I have actually a week of only virtual things. And then I go to WebEx1, which is in San Diego. Right. And after that, I mean, this may sound like a crazy person's schedule. It is a crazy person's schedule. After that, I'm at IBM Tech Exchange in Orlando, then Oracle Cloud World in Las Vegas, then Lenovo. Whoops, I switched off of there. Then I go to Lenovo's Global Industry Analyst Conference in Raleigh. Then I'm at Adobe Max in Los Angeles. These are all back to back. Smartsheet Engage. Looking forward to that one to get deeper dive there. And then Veeam's Analyst Summit and then Microsoft Ignite. Those are boom, 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 boom. So
that's a lot.
Y'all need to tune in because we will have a lot to talk about. Where will you be?
So next week I'm going to be in New York for Cloudera. Really nice. They've been around for a while with great enterprise data platform. Then I actually have 4 in 1 week with SAP, Teradata, IBM, and NetSuite. And then there's Cloud World, and then I have Data IQ. And then after that, I have Infor, and then we go to IFS, or I go to IFS, and then I'll see you at Microsoft Ignite, and then Amazon reInvent. So I think we'll be in some hopefully hotel rooms where when I get up, I'll know where I'm at. Sometimes when you get out of bed, you're like, where am I today? So
yes, I know that all too well. But we're gonna try really hard to keep up this streak of having our pods weekly. We might have to make them a little shorter. Today's was long, but I think we had some really interesting things to talk about, and I appreciate all your questions. But yeah, like I said, you all need to stay tuned because we have a lot to talk about a lot of different companies making big changes. This is really the time of year that people are strategizing for next year. We're going to help break it down, and we will see you next time. If there's anything you do want us to talk about, drop us a line, give us a like, a share, a follow, and keep up with us because, there's a lot going on. Thanks, Robert.